Hi everyone. So this is our second video in the playlist for JavaScript fundamentals. So if you haven't seen the first video, I would highly recommend you see the first video and then you can come back to this video. Uh, the first video was about the JavaScript engine that covers the fundamentals of how the JavaScript code is executed by the underlying interpreter or compiler. So in this video, now I'm assuming that you have a basic knowledge of JavaScript engine, how JavaScript executes code. Again, if you don't have a crisp understanding on that, go and watch the first video. It's only 15 minutes, but a very informative one. But now, assuming you're already familiar with the JavaScript engine, how it executes the code. So in this video, we will typically discuss about three topics. One is the lexical environment, another is the execution context, and after that, we will discuss about execution stack. So let's get started with the lexical environment. So lexical environment, what is it? It is basically the physical location of your code. Now, lexical environment is not does not matter in every language, but in few languages like JavaScript, it matters. So it really matters where you are physically writing the code. So, for example, let's say we have var a equal to 4 at line number 3. Now, this is lexically present within the function ABC. This is physically present within the function ABC. And now let's say the variable a equal to 4 again declared at line number 8. The lexical environment for this variable is this function xyz. So we can say that this variable is declared is this variable is present physically within the function xyz, and this variable is present physically within the function abc. So there's a physical difference. There's a difference where it's physically located. So this physical location is the lexical environment for that particular code, for that particular variable. Now, why does it matter? So it matters because your compiler, because your JavaScript engine, V8 cares about it. Why does it care about it? We will get to know about it in future videos when we talk more about scopes, lexical scopes, and we talk about closures. But as of now, let's keep this in mind. It is your compiler, it's your engine that actually cares about where your code is physically present. So that is what lexical environment means. Now let's discuss what is an execution context. So as we can see in our program, there are many lexical environments. There is this lexical environment for the function ABC, then there is lexical environment for XYZ. Now let's say I declare another variable, let's say var b equal to 5. So the lexical environment for this variable is global. It doesn't come under any function. It's accessible globally. So this kind of lexical environment can be called as global. Now, as we see, there are many lexical environments. So how do we make sure that at one time there is one lexical environment that's running? So JavaScript will execute one lexical environment at one time. Now, this is made sure as this lexical environment is kind of contained in a container, and that container will be executed at a typical uh, point of time. Now, this container is what is called an execution context. So I hope that makes sense. So execution context is just a container for the currently running lexical scope. Now there can be many kind of execution context. So one is global execution context. So as we see the variable declared where a b equal to 5, that comes under global execution context because it's accessible globally. It's not restricted to a typical function. So if I want to access this variable here, I can. if I okay, and let's say I want to access this variable in this function, I can do it here as well. I can do it here as well. So it's accessible globally. And the another execution context ABC. So it's again a self kind of you can say a container for in itself. So whatever is present in this container will be accessible within the container. So it will become more clear when we dig deep into lexical scopes. So lexical scope is different than a lexical environment. This in this video we were discussing about lexical environment. In future videos we'll be discussing about lexical scopes as well. So this container is the execution context. So now comes the most important part, execution stack. So how does these execution contexts get executed by the engine? So this is where the execution stack comes into picture, and this is very important. This is more important than lexical environment and even execution context to understand, because a lot of concepts in future will be dependent on your understanding of execution stack. Sorry, sorry. So let me draw a picture here. So firstly, we understand what is a stack. So stack is a data structure, last in first out. Whatever comes in there last will be the first one out, or whatever is will be coming there in first, it will be last to go out. So execution stack is something that will be created by the V8, by the JavaScript engine. Let's say, so this is the stack data structure. So this is our execution stack. I'll call it ES. Now let's start our JavaScript engine. Once it has gone through the creation phase, now it will come into the execution phase. Okay, what happens here? Now, one thing you need to understand here is the execution context gets created during the creation phase. Okay, so now we are in the, let's say, execution, we are in the execution phase. So our first variable, our first line is where a equal to b. Okay, let's say, okay, that's fine, where a equal to b. By default, we will have a global execution context. So that is, you may say, the first one in. So that sits here, global execution context. Now, I have made some changes in the code. So here I'm executing the function ABC, and after that, I'm executing the function XYZ. So what will be my next thing in the stack? So it will be ABC. And now ABC is executed. So once ABC enters the stack, it executes its code, and once it's done, that means ABC is done. So it will be thrown out of the stack. Cool. So this is gone. And after that, the next thing that will be coming here is XYZ function. Again, the XYZ code is done. So even XYZ will be thrown out. And at this time, whatever code is there in the global execution stack, even that will be executed. And once that is done, the execution stack ends. Now here there's an interesting scenario. Now I have made some changes in the code. So I'm defining here two functions. So one is the outer function, another is the inner function. So outer function is just logging out outer, and inner function is logging out inner. And let's call it outer here. So this is a very interesting scenario. So let's see over here. So firstly, I will have my execution stack. So this is my global execution stack. Now after that, what happens? My first function to be first function to be run. So you have to see which is the first function that is running. It is outer. So next entry in the stack is outer. Now what happens in the outer? So it's logging outer. Okay, the code will log outer, and at that time it's calling one more function inner. So this function hasn't ended yet. The outer function hasn't ended yet. So it won't be thrown out of the stack as of now. So but there will be one more entry in the stack, and this entry will be of inner. Now the inner function gets started. Now what happens in the inner function? Console.log inner. Okay, it will print console.log, and after that the inner function is done. Now at this point the inner function will be thrown out of the stack. Once it's thrown out of the stack, at that point, at that juncture, the outer function also ends, and this time the outer function will be also out of the stack, and then it comes to global execution context. Now consider a very interesting scenario here. Let's say in this inner function I'm calling one more function. There is one more function, I'm calling that function. And in the same way, in this function, I will call one more function. Then again, I will call one more function. Then again, I will call one more function. Now, in this case, what happens is nothing is going out of the stack, but nothing is going out of the stack, but the entries are filling up. Why they are filling up? Because I am calling the function, one function in another function, and ultimately no function is getting completed, but I am keeping on calling the functions. Now, in this way, my call stack gets aggregated, and eventually it can get up to a size wherein there is no memory left. So at this point you may get an error called max stack error or something like that. So you may face it sometimes in your program. At that time you can understand the call stack has gone out of bound, so there is no further memory left to accommodate more entries into the stack. Now, what could be one of the scenarios that you can think of in which this kind of thing can happen? One scenario could be recursion. So you're calling a function within the function, and let's say you forgot to end the recursion. Now, in that scenario, this kind of scenario can happen. So again, you have to make sure of these things, that you're not causing an infinite entries into the stack without other functions getting exited. So there's a concept around this called tail call optimization. We will cover it in future videos. That kind of makes sure we don't reach this kind of call stack errors, especially during recursive functions. So yeah, that was it from me, from my end. So if you have any queries, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer them all. Do like this video, do share this video, do subscribe. I will be in future videos, we'll be covering more interesting topics like scopes, closures. We'll be delving very deep into other JavaScript concepts like bind, apply, really understand them, what is happening under the hood. And then we'll be going further into asynchronous programming. And ES6 features. So a lot of stuff is planned. So yeah, make sure you subscribe the channel and do let me know for any feedback. It's still early days for me in the content creation, so I'll be learning along the way. But I will really appreciate your any kind of feedback from you. I hope you learned something from this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much.